Hey, I'm going to show you how to sand cast a little flat slabby sapphire in a pendant and have it so that the light comes through it so that you see the stone on both halves of the pendant. And you get to see the light coming through this little slabby type rough sapphire. All right, let's get into it. Alrighty, so there's our little pendant shape. There's our sapphire. And the jump ring we're going to use as a bail. Let's set that to the side. And we have red clay made by Craig Dabler. We also have Craig's flask. So he's DIY casting. An American gentleman makes amazing products. Alright, so this is our flask. It comes apart in two halves. So we're going to start with our male half first. So that's the half that has the sticky outy lip. That's the part we start with. So we put it lip side down and let's pack it with this clay from behind. Let's do loose, crumbly bits of clay first. Make sure it's all nice and tightly packed. Check it. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And then let's go with a big old handful. Now we're going to use our hammer to compress the clay. Scrape all that extra away. Let's take off that extra clay on the back so it's nice and flush and smooth. We have to flip it over now. The lip side is the side that we work with. The reason why we're not hammering the lip side is because if we're beating on this little aluminium lip, eventually your two halves aren't going to fit together properly. So for the longevity of your flask, just flip it over, pack from behind. And then all you have to do is flip it back over and you have a nice flat surface with compressed clay. Let's put down some cornstarch. So this is our releasing agent. So it's our barrier between the two clay halves to stop them from sticking together. It also helps stop our objects from getting stuck in the clay. All right, so this is our pendant. Just going to pop it in the middle of the flask and I'm going to press it into the clay. And then let's get our female half of the flask, put her on top. Let's get all these pesky bits of clay out of the way first. Make sure that lip's nice and clean. I want the two clay halves to be really tightly touching. All right, there we go, fits on nicely. Now let's use loose crumbly bits of clay. Use our thumb and fingers to make sure it's all nice and tightly packed around that object so there's no cracks, crevices or air bubbles, and then just big old handful. Alright, compress with the hammer. Using our ruler to clear our space, but also let's take off all that extra clay. Alright, let's pull this apart. Cool. I'm just going to press that in a little bit deeper into this side. So I've got to make sure that I don't press this object too deep into the clay. Because if I make the impression too deep, it's going to be a very thick pendant. And I want to make sure that it's only as thick as this stone is so that I'm able to see the stone on both halves of the pendant. So at the moment, this piece of metal is quite thin and I just need to push it into the clay a little bit more just to make my silver version a little bit thicker to accommodate this stone, but also it needs to be a little bit thicker so that it can cast. Sand casting has a restriction of 2 millimeters, so anything thinner than 2 millimeters and it won't cast very well, if at all. So unfortunately, if I was to make a mold of just this as it is, chances are it wouldn't form properly because the metal would cool rapidly and solidify before it finished making a full disc. So we do have to get it in the clay and press it in just a little bit deeper again, just to make sure it's a thicker version of itself so that it's reaching that 2 millimeter minimum, but also it can accommodate the stone that I want to place in it. So let me get out my jump ring. So you could have the jump ring going this way, but I'm going to have it perpendicular like that. So I'm going to pop it into the clay upright like this. And I need to make sure that this jump ring impression is overlapping with the pendant impression so that they are connected. Let's put our female flask on top, lining up the registration mark, and I should be able to just press that down and there will be a corresponding bail impression on the other side. Fantastic. And there's nice full contact between these two impressions. Easy peasy. Before I start placing my stone in, I have to create a way for the molten metal to get inside of this negative impression. So I have to create a hole that I can pour the silver into. So I'm going to use this straw and I'm going to, maybe I'll put it right there. Has to be in full contact with your impression so that you have 100% of that metal going 100% into your design. You don't want to have your sprue hole, which is what we've just created. You don't want to have that sprue hole off to the side because there's a chance that not enough metal will get into your pendant impression. So that's the hole that I've got. It's a little bit small to aim for with molten metal. So let's create a bowl that we can pour the metal into, and that bowl is going to funnel that metal down that hole that we just created and into our pendant shape. And this funnel is a much bigger target to aim for with molten metal. So I'm just using this knifey tool to cut out a funnel. All right, and we've got to clean up that hole in that funnel and make sure there's no loose bits of clay. Because if there's any loose bits of clay, there's a big chance it's going to follow your molten metal into your mold and it's just going to cause all sorts of problems, porosity and cavities of burnt clay. So everything leads to sadness. So just make sure that you clean up that funnel and that hole. Fantastic. I'm going to get my pendant shape and I'm going to just really gently press on that surface to make sure that that surface has gone back to being flat, because after I pressed that straw through the clay, it has actually made the clay pucker up around that straw hole, which results in your silver version having a big divot, a big valley around your sprue, and that's not very desirable. So you just got to get your object, pop it in, and just consolidate that surface again. And while we're at it, let's just do some air vents. So Craig's flask has these holes in the side for air vents. I don't personally use them, but you're more than welcome to use them when you're casting with Craig stuff. I personally prefer to do a little channel like that and then poke all the way through. And your air vents have to be on the top of your mold, so the roof of your house, because they're little chimneys to let out all the smoke and the steam. So let's do another air vent over here. Again, there it is. There's my little chimney. And why not do another one right there? Poke all the way through. There's my little chimney. Cool. So I'm going to set that to the side. And now this is the face of my pendant. This is the fun side, the side that I'm going to place my stone in. So I probably don't need the pawpaw ointment to keep the stone in place, but I'm going to do it anyway. So there's my little stone. And I'm going to stick him jelly side down. So I'm going to put a little bit of pawpaw ointment on the side that I think is, I guess, the most handsome side. And then I'm going to place the stone in the mold where I'd like it to sit. Right there. And I'm going to give it a gentle press, but that's just to make sure that the stone is in contact with the clay. I'm not actually pushing the stone into the clay at all. So what I would like is, if I remove that stone, I would like no impression. I'd like that to still be a smooth surface. So that's what I mean. We're not pushing the stone into the clay at all. We're just making sure it's in contact with it. It's touching it. That's it. Alrighty. So the stone's not moving because I used the pawpaw ointment. You don't have to use pawpaw ointment. You can just use any petroleum-based jelly. Vaseline's a good one. So, looking pretty good. Let's just close it up and cast, see how it goes. Sometimes what I like to do is with my thumb and fingers, just press on the clay really gently, just to make sure that those two clay halves are snug as a bug up against each other, because we want to make sure we've got as little flashing as possible. We want to make sure there's no spillage of silver around our pendant. Okay, let's melt. So the hottest part of the flame is about 2 centimeters away from that bright blue tip. The bright blue tip is not actually the hottest part of the flame. And you always need more metal than required for your casting. So say your pendant's going to weigh 5 grams. You're going to be casting with 10 to 15 grams because you need that extra metal to create pressure. So we need that extra gravity to force this molten metal deep into the recesses of your design. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. We've got that to a rolling melt now. That means it's rolling around in the crucible and it's not getting stuck to the side. So it's rolling around freely as one big blob. I'm going to bring my crucible up to my flask. I'm going to rest it on the edge of my flask, keeping the flame on it the entire time. Then all I have to do is twist my wrist and send the metal down the hole, keeping the flame on it the entire time. So 1, 2, 3, down the hole. All right, let's open this up. Let's see what we made. Looks pretty good so far. Let's dig that out. So there's my stone. And you can see it on the back as well. Fantastic. And we have a little bit of flashing around the pendant, but not very much. And it's going to be quite easy to clean up. And our bail formed quite nicely. Do have to drill a hole through the side of it, but it's a hell of a lot easier than soldering a jump ring onto your pendant. So this burnt clay we can't keep. So you just scrape out the worst of the burnt clay, and the rest of the clay we can use for another mold. So I use my bolt cutter to cut the bulk of the sprue off, and I can remelt this down and turn it into something else. And my pendant looks pretty good. Stone is all in one piece, no cracks. And you can see through it, which is wonderful. So a little bit of cleanup and that one will be ready to wear. Thank you very much for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I can keep making these videos for you. Till next time.